What's up, guys? What's up, guys? Tim Area again, back with another video blog slash podcasty type conversation here in my garage about unsung eras in professional wrestling. Once again, not dealing with the main three that I feel like everybody talks about a lot, which is the golden age of professional wrestling, you know, in the 50s and 60s, back when it was still real. The rock and wrestling era, you know, in 1984, 1985, 1986, when it went global and Vince McMahon kind of took over Hulk Hogan, and not the Attitude Era, which was obviously one of the biggest money-making eras for pro wrestling with the Monday Night Wars and Stone Cold Steve Austin, NWO, etc., etc. I'm trying to go in order too. This is basically the order of my lifetime. I started watching professional wrestling, I imagine, in the crib. I've been watching it my entire life. I don't remember ever not watching it. So again, these are eras that have sort of already happened in my life. I was born in '85. I was born right smack dab in the middle of the rock and wrestling era. I was born like 2 months after WrestleMania 1 happened. So I was, you know, very much a Hulkamaniac growing up, and the bright colors and the cartoony stuff. But I've also spent a lot of time watching pro wrestling, reading things about pro wrestling, discussing pro wrestling. I was an amateur wrestler. I love watching collegiate wrestling. You know, my uncle did a little bit of pro wrestling. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I'm obviously too skinny to be one. But I just love all things pro wrestling, and I sort of want to share my opinions and facts for future use, for future generations, or for anybody that just so happens to come across this and is interested in seeing a couple of these videos that I have, like I said, going in order throughout these key points in pro wrestling that you may skip over if you're a new fan, or if you're an older fan or something like that. You might want to only see today's product. You might only want to see stuff from the 80s. You might only want to see stuff from the late 90s. But these are all things that if you go and check out, if you have DVDs of this stuff, or if you have the WWE Network, or, you know, even YouTube, the easiest way to access, you know, a lot of this content, you can go back and check these eras, these blocks of time in these specific companies, whether it's WCW, ECW, WWF, WWE. You can go back and just basically play any sort of product, whether it's the television product, the weekly stuff that was leading up to these pay-per-views, or even just these pay-per-views in a row, because it's all very solid quality stuff that I think sometimes people sleep on. So now again, I said I'm not going to do the Attitude Era because there's been so much done about it, but with this era that I want to talk about is right before the Attitude Era hits in WWF. So this is like mid to, we'll call it the end of 1997. At the time, again, WWF was losing the Monday Night Wars. The NWO had sort of taken over. Hulk Hogan turned heel. Randy Savage is on the other program. Roddy Piper is on the other program. And Eric Bischoff at the helm of WCW, and with, you know, Ted Turner's billions and billions of dollars, they were winning the ratings war. So WWF sort of had to look at their mistakes and see what the heck was going on and make some changes. And this is sort of the beginning of that. And that's why you know, don't just skip over everything and go right to the Attitude Era stuff. The build up and the lead to all of those months and those pay-per-views is very good content, and I'm going to get into it now. We'll start in July of '97. In Your House 16 was the Canadian Stampede. It's considered by a lot of purists one of the best pay-per-views WWF ever put on. WWF at the time, WWE. Definitely one of the best In Your Houses. This was towards the end of the In Your House pay-per-views being branded as In Your House. Eventually they would just sort of ditch the In Your House name and go with all standalone names. But in the In Your House pay-per-view that we're talking about here, okay, again, the town and the company, you got Godwins versus Blackjacks in a free-for-all pre-pay-per-view match. I always like Mark Canterbury. Henry Godwin used to go by Tex Slazenger, I believe, in WCW too. Big, you know, he fought in the Brawl for All. big, broody, bulk monster type dude that I really thought they could have done a little bit more with, as far as being like maybe a monster heel type guy. Then they made him go face. This was obviously them and his cousin Phineas Godwin, who I actually met and had a very nice conversation with when I was like 13, 14 years old at an independent show. And he actually gave me some spoilers for what was going to be happening on the next couple weeks on Raw, which is pretty cool. So if this ever gets back to you, thank you for that, Phineas. Against the Blackjacks, Bradshaw and Barry Windham, you know, if you were going to have two big kick-ass cowboy dudes in a movie, you know, this is basically, you know, you couldn't write the parts any better for those two guys. Bradshaw obviously going on to become the #1 heel in the company, you know, less than 10 years later, and Barry Windham, widely considered one of the best workers of all time. So again, I love that. The Blackjacks didn't really get a good draw in the WWE. They never got like a tag title or anything like that, but I thought that was a team that could have worked a lot better. Yeah, opening match on this one, you have Triple H versus Mankind. I believe this is, if this is July, it was probably blow off of after their King of the Ring feud. I know Triple H won King of the Ring in '97 and he beat Mankind in the finals. This goes to a double count out actually, but anytime those guys did matches with Cactus Jack and Triple H in the Hell in a Cell when he was the Game, and they were fighting out as Mankind with the brown gimmick outfit and the posh, the upscale rich guy. So those guys fought a lot of times on a lot of pay-per-views and always made music together. You had Great Sasuke beating Taka Michinoku on this pay-per-view. This was now WWF had sort of started to realize, like, oh, you know, WCW's got all these cruiserweights and they're opening every match with a cruiserweight, high energy performance, and they got the cruiserweight title and all that. They're bringing in the Japanese guys, the Mexican guys. So this was Vince starting to steal that play out of the book. And it's funny that they put Sasuke over here because Taka was the guy that they built the light heavyweight division around at the time. Both guys, super great athletes and very much legendary in their home country, Japan. And it's nice to see them on a pay-per-view here. It adds a little bit of different flavor to the pay-per-view. You also had Undertaker beating Vader for the world title. That's a main event title match, in my opinion, in any day of the week. Vader, again, I've said this before, should have been sort of the unstoppable monster heel. He was one of those guys that got sort of buried by the clique and the political stuff. He messed up that match with SummerSlam with Shawn Michaels, where he botched a couple spots and stuff like that, and Shawn didn't really want to do business with him. They say Shawn Michaels was very hard to deal with around those times, 96, 97. But in my opinion, yeah, Vader, just like they did it in WCW, he could have been the guy that just came in, beat the heck out of all the white meat babyface top faces of the company, and then just ran with the title for a little while, because in real life, nobody's gonna beat a guy like that. But somebody like Undertaker, when he's the champion, Undertaker had won the title he had won the title previously. I was gonna say SummerSlam, but I think that's coming up. Yeah, Vader and Undertaker, that's a great match. And then it's funny, there's only 5 matches on this card, and that includes the free-for-all match. And the main event, obviously the big 10-man tag match, you had Bret Hart, Brian Pillman, British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart, and Owen Hart representing the Hart Foundation. This is when they had sort of reformed the Hart Foundation. Owen and Bulldog were fighting each other, and Bret was slowly turning heel, and Bret sort of got everybody together. Bret and Owen had been feuding since like 93, 94, and here we are in 97, and he sort of gets everybody back together. I love the Hart Foundation in WWF as a faction, not just the tag team from the 80s. Again, loaded with talent. Bret and Owen together, that's, two of the best. You got Pillman, one of the best light heavyweights that ended up, passing away a little too early. Bulldog and Neidhart were sort of the muscle of the group. Just great stuff. And they took on Ken Shamrock, Goldust, the Legion of Doom, and Stone Cold. Goldust, I think, was a replacement. Somebody, the Patriot, I believe, was supposed to be in that match. I'm not going to dig through this Wikipedia article to confirm that fact. Again, I'm not fact-checking anything on here. I don't have any notes. I just have Wikipedia open so it can show me, the pay-per-views one after another. But I think the Patriot was supposed to be in that spot and he got hurt. Patriot and Bret Hart were feuding. The Patriot versus Bret Hart, which also doesn't get a lot of attention. The Patriot versus Bret Hart, that feud is sort of what started the Attitude Era. Not a lot of people give that play. The Patriot coming in and going against Bret Hart is sort of what started that slow heel turn for Bret Hart, because obviously the Patriot, red, white, and blue, super America guy. Bret was very much Canada, Canada. And the crowd really started taking to that USA, USA stuff. And Bret was regarded as a hero in Canada and everywhere else around the world. And the Patriot was really just sort of some guy that really didn't make a lot of noise anywhere else in the world as far as on a national professional wrestling scene. He was, I think, a Southern independent guy type deal. And, you know, he didn't get any titles, obviously, in the WWE. But that feud is what sort of, in my opinion, you know, then that feud sort of led to the Bret and Shawn stuff, which led to the DX stuff. So in my opinion, you know, like I said, Yokozuna is responsible for killing Hulkamania at King of the Ring 93. Patriot and Bret Hart are responsible for the Attitude Era, in my opinion. So you should check out some of that stuff, again, on the weekly Raw televisions and stuff back then. But that's a great match, a great pay-per-view. Meltzer gave this best major show in 1997, and again, Meltzer is not super keen on handing out you know, big accomplishment things to WWF, but he did there. All right, so the following pay-per-view now is SummerSlam. That's what I meant. Bret versus Undertaker in the main event. This was when we start seeing the Bret and Shawn stuff start boiling over again. You know, that they had sort of started with, you know, Bret and Shawn, they were feuding with Hart Foundation and the Rockers feuded. Bret and Shawn feuded when Bret was the champion for the first time and Shawn was Intercontinental Champion. And then they're basically back to feuding here. So, you know, those guys had a lot of, you know, different sort of rivalries and matches and stuff. At this SummerSlam, you got Mankind again with Triple H in the opener in a cage match, though, which is cool. This was East Rutherford. Yeah, East Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm a Jersey guy. I did not get to go to this show, but anytime you got a cage match in your opener in Jersey, to me, that's money. I know the fans around here are very accustomed to Madison Square Garden, blow-off cage matches and stuff like that. Bruno Sammartino was very famous for that. So that's cool to see that. And it's a good idea opening with a hot match like that. And Mankind gets the win here, which is nice. You got Goldust and Brian Pillman. They were doing the whole feud for Marlena thing, which never got a blow-off, I don't think. Goldust beats Pillman here. Pillman would go on to beat Goldust. Maybe at the next pay-per-view, we'll talk about that when I get to it. And then Pillman gets Marlena's services as a manager. And then he passed away like right after that happened. So I know the plan was that Marlena was supposed to turn on Goldust allegedly, and Marlena, you know, because Marlena and Pillman had actually dated in real life prior to Dustin, aka Goldust, and Marlena getting together. So there was a little bit of that weird sort of tension that Vince McMahon liked to, you know, interject in his storylines. But unfortunately, Brian passed away before they were able to culminate any of that stuff. But it's nice seeing Goldust getting the win here. You had Legion of Doom against the Godwins again, just four big, you know, broody dudes, power, muscle dudes. Everybody always pops for the Legion of Doom. It's nice seeing them getting a feel-good win here. You had British Bulldog versus Ken Shamrock, and he beats him by DQ for the European title. Bulldog was the perfect guy to put the European Championship on first and foremost. I think they basically did that pretty much for him. It was sort of a weird idea to have a strictly European championship at the time. Intercontinental sort of meant, you know, intercontinental by definition means, you know, North America, I guess, which makes sense. So you have the world title for the whole world. You have Intercontinental just for North America. And then they kind of had that European Championship. But Shamrock and Bulldog were sort of similar builds, and Shamrock obviously probably could have and should have done more as far as maybe getting a big shot or a world title run or something like that. He did win, I know, the tag and the Intercontinental title, so he was most of the way there. But I always liked seeing those two guys wrestle. You had a lot of, this was the gang war, faction wars was going on. Once NWO hit in WCW, as the biggest faction basically of all time. Again, in WWF, trying to bite some of those ideas, they real quick split up the Nation of Domination, which was 3 main dudes between Crush, Farouk, and Savio Vega. And then each one of those dudes got a faction. So you had the Puerto Rican faction of Los Boricuas with Savio Vega. You had Crush go start the Disciples of Apocalypse, which was like a biker gang, Sons of Anarchy type thing a few years before they did that. And then Farouk still stayed with the Nation, obviously. But here you get an 8-man tag match with the DOA versus the Boricuas. Boricuas get the win, which is funny too, because most of those guys, except for Savio, I don't know if anybody else can really name any of the other. You know, if you were to ask me, I would, you know, not looking at it, I would have said maybe Miguel Perez Jr. And I don't know any of the other guys. Looking at it now, Miguel Perez Jr. is one of the guys. Jose Estrada Jr., Jesus Castillo. I think most of those dudes are all 2nd or 3rd generation Puerto Rican or Mexican wrestlers. So I know that they were legit dudes. They just never really got any play as far as being single guys. Savio obviously never got any kind of a singles run or even a tag title run. But it's funny seeing the Boricuas get the win here. You had Austin versus Owen Hart in the semi-main for the Intercontinental title, very famously when Austin breaks his neck. Huge moment for professional wrestling history. It changed Austin's style for the rest of his life. It sort of turned Austin off of Owen for a little while. Botched tombstone pile driver. He won it. Owen tried to do the tombstone but land on his butt instead. Not a very safe move. I've seen people do that before successfully. But yeah, just not something I would be wanting to take. And interestingly enough, I think Steve Austin did a similar move to either Kensuke Sasaki. I think it was Kensuke Sasaki in Japan. It was either him or Masachono. Austin ended up doing the same move to, let's say, Sasaki earlier than this when he was still in WCW. He did that same exact botched sit-out tombstone and messed up Sasaki's neck. You can find footage of that, I think, on the internet as well. And then the main event, you got Bret Hart solidifying sort of his bad guy heel run with the win over The Undertaker for the world title in the main event. Shawn Michaels accidentally hits Undertaker with the steel chair. He's forced to count Undertaker out because he's the guest referee. Bret's the new world champion, and we're sort of off to the races with the Bret and Shawn feud, which is what would sort of be the main feud that started the Attitude Era before Vince McMahon and Steve Austin's feud would start. Okay, so after SummerSlam of that year, in September of '97, we get Ground Zero in Your House. Now, this was the first one. Instead of being In Your House Ground Zero, this was Ground Zero subtitled In Your House. So this is when you can see they were starting to get away from that In Your House moniker. Again, a lot of talent at the roster here. This is where Pillman gets the win back over Goldust. Again, okay, we're seeing a lot of the same matches, 2-3 pay-per-views in a row. You're getting 2 of the 3 same matches. I get it, they like to stretch out things and have it go on for 3-4 months or whatever, but sometimes enough is enough. As a fan that watches every single WWF pay-per-view, you know, if you see the same match 3 months in a row on pay-per-view, you know, and generally the way the booking goes, it's, you know, guy A wins the first match, guy B wins the second match, and then guy A wins the third match. Or there's a guy A wins the first match, there's a schmaz finish in the second match where nobody wins, or it's a double DQ or a double count out, and then a big culmination in the third match. Like, you know, we could basically do, you know, we could probably do with 1 match per pay-per-view, but I get it, they, you know, they sort of got to make things last. You had Brian Christopher versus Scott Putski in this one. Scott Putski, obviously, I feel like I'm saying obviously a lot in this video. Scott Putski, the son of the Polish Hammer Ivan Putski, who was a big star regionally back in the day, and then for Vince McMahon, or Vince's father, in the late, maybe late 70s, 80s. Just big body guys, shorter dudes, but big body guys. Brian Christopher gets the win here. Again, this is sort of them establishing the light heavyweight division. Brian Christopher would become the top heel of the division, I guess you could say, even though there's only maybe 4 guys. And Scott Putski was sort of a guy that I think they maybe thought that they could do something with, but he never ended up really going anywhere, and he injured his leg pretty bad. It might have been in a WWF ring, I can't remember, but he broke his leg coming off the top off a turnbuckle, and I know his career was never the same after that. You got a triple threat match with the three faction dudes I was talking about: Savio Vega, Crush, and Farouk. And Savio Vega gets the win again. I love Savio Vega. I think he was a great character when he was the Puerto Rican face when he came in, and he was buddies with Razor Ramon and stuff. He was a bigger dude, you know. He was similar size of maybe like a Devon Dudley type guy, but he threw the big spinning wheel kicks and, you know, did a lot of flying around. I loved when he made it to the finals of the King of the Ring against Mabel. I really thought that they were going to have him go over and win the King of the Ring because he was sort of the young, fresh baby face. I thought maybe that would have been his star, you know, King Savio, and then he could have done something. But, you know, they ended up putting it on Mabel, which was sort of a big disaster anyway. But it's funny to see Savio getting another win here over these factions, even though we know Farouk would sort of go on to be the guy that sort of had the lasting legacy. They had little people back with Max Meni and El Torito. El Torito, I believe, went on to become, he was one of the guys, I think they also probably called him El Torito again or something like that with the Matadors. He kind of dressed up as a little bull when they had Primo and Epico with the masks on and stuff like that. Max Mini, phenomenal little person wrestler, probably regarded as one of the best, you know, after somebody like Sky Lolo or whatever, who I'm a big fan of. They had a tag team 4-way elimination match for the vacant tag titles, and the Headbangers go over, oddly enough, over the Godwins, excuse me, the Legion of Doom, and Owen Hart and the British Bulldog. I remember as a kid, Owen Hart and the British Bulldogs seemed to have the tag titles forever. I remember they won the tag titles, and it just seemed like they always had the tag titles, or they never lost them. And I know the Headbangers didn't get a very lengthy run, and I know they didn't get a lot of runs. This may be the only time they won, and it may have only lasted for a week or two on TV. I'm not going to delve into it. I'm not going to fact check, but. Again, a lot of talent, and anytime I like 4-way elimination tag team matches. I think it's cool seeing it, you know, the guys around the ring, and you know, it's sort of like a little mini tournament. Bret Hart beats the Patriot here by submission. That just goes to show you where they were sort of at. Bret Hart, the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, and the Patriot, you know, still never really did anything. I guess this is him back here from injury. And, you know, it was a smart move to keep the heel hot with the title and stuff like that. And having the Patriots submit is something, too. That's a pretty defining win. I don't think the Patriot would ever get another title shot on pay-per-view again. But it's nice to see Bret get a solid victory like that. And then you had Undertaker and Shawn Michaels go to a no contest. I want to say, is this where Kane came in? Oh, no. So Kane were to come in the first Hell in the Cell at Bad Blood. So this was, oh yeah, referee Tim White appeared and called for the bell. So it was basically just a smosh finish. This was not the Kane thing. Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. They give him 16 minutes and 20 seconds. They were basically just setting up for that big Hell in the Cell match, which would end up being the first Hell in the Cell match. And I'm pretty sure that also got a 5-star rating from Dave Meltzer. The pay-per-view, in pay-per-view chronology, the WWF One Night Only pay-per-view was next, and that was in England only. Doesn't have a great, crazy set of matches that had a lot of storyline behind it. It was just sort of like a house show that they made a big thing for and made a pay-per-view exclusively over there in the UK. You got guys like Tiger Ali Singh defeating Leif Cassidy, aka Al Snow. Love Al Snow, but that's not a match I'm really going to pay a ton of money to see. Headbangers beat Los Boricuas for the tag titles, which is nice to see them retain on a pay-per-view, which again probably didn't happen. Patriot beats Flash Funk. Again, I talked about Too Cold Scorpio in another video, aka Flash Funk. Loved him as a performer, and he really got shafted in WWF as well. You had Legion of Doom against the Godwins. Again, we saw that a bunch of times. You had Vader versus Owen Hart for some reason. I know they fought in the European title tournament, and Owen beat Vader, and something happened. There was like a, he missed a moonsault and Owen covered him or something like that. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Bret Hart beats The Undertaker by disqualification again. And then this was where famously Shawn Michaels wins the European title from British Bulldog, which people had, people were losing it. And it's kind of ballsy to go over there, put the Bulldog in the main event. He meant so much to that country and the pro wrestling fans. And then for Shawn to just basically, squash him and take the title, a European title as an American guy from Texas. It's kind of funny. In October of '97, we had Bad Blood in Your House. Again, instead of In Your House, Bad Blood, now it's Bad Blood in Your House. This was very famously the first Hell in the Cell match, which I said I believe got a 5-star rating. Yeah, it did get a 5-star rating. You had Nation of Domination in this pay-per-view in a handicap match. D'Lo, and The Rock, who had very recently just joined the Nation, I believe at this time, beat LOD. I know LOD were in the last couple of reviews I talked about. I know they got wins here and there and stuff like that, like over the Godwins or whatever. But I know at the time I've heard and read about that. This was when Hawk from the LOD was going through a lot of drinking problems and had maybe mental health issues or something like that. And because of his unreliability and stuff like that, they never got a tag title run in this era. If you go back and watch. And they lost a lot of matches. They lost a lot on Monday Night Raw. They lost a lot to the New Age Outlaws, who obviously went on to become one of the biggest tag teams as well of all time. But you can see here they lost. It's a handicap match, so it's sort of understandable that they would lose, but they did not get put over. Another little person match, Maximilian Nova defeating Mosaic and Tarantula. Again, Vince sort of grasped at straws. He brought the women's division back. He built the cruiserweight division, and he was bringing little people back. He had this was around the same time too. He was doing deals with tried doing deals with Tenryu and some Japanese wrestlers. Tried doing deals with Jim Cornette and Smoky Mountain wrestlers. So it's nice, adding other things into the mix, except aside from Giant Monster face battles, Giant Monster heel. The Godwins win the tag titles at this pay-per-view from the Headbangers. Okay, so I don't know if they flip-flopped anywhere weekly on Raws or anything like that, if I'm missing one. But the Godwin wins the title here. They had Uncle Cletus in their corner, who also went by Dirty White Boy and was T.L. Hopper. I believe Dirty White Boy in the Smoky Mountain, Jim Cornette areas, and he was T.L. Hopper in the cartoon days of WWF when everybody was a profession, was a gimmicked profession of some kind. And this was, I believe, the Godwins were turning back heel around this time too, which I always thought was a better fit for them. Owen Hart beats Farouk for the vacant Intercontinental title in a tournament final. Owen Hart is a great Intercontinental champion. The title went vacant after Austin's neck injury, I believe. I want to say that would make sense. They put the title back on Owen. He wins the tournament, beats Farouk in the world title. Again, I wish Farouk would have got maybe a world title run in WWF. I wish they would have just sort of used him as Ron Simmons. I know Vince likes to sort of throw his own twist on things. But, even Ron Simmons as a heel world champion or as a, babyface, white meat babyface champion, he would have been the first black champion had they done it there as well. That would have been cool to see him being, the first black heavyweight champion in WCW and then go and do it in WWF. But he doesn't. He got a bunch of tag title runs with Bradshaw. He may or may not have even had a hardcore title run, maybe not. But never got a singles title, not even this Intercontinental title, which is a shame. But again, Owen being an awesome athlete, and makes sense that they got to put it back on Owen, so when Austin returns, Austin can beat him again for the title. They had another faction match with the DOA, this time going over Los Boricuas. That was very commonplace at the time, just to show them how, like, hey, look, we got all these factions together. On a lot of the Monday Night Raws and the pay-per-views, they did some sort of Boricuas versus DOA, DOA versus Nation, all three of them against each other, etc. You had a flag match again. They're really getting their money's worth with this Canada versus USA thing at the time. Bret Hart and British Bulldog beat Vader and the Patriot in a flag match in America. And it's funny to show that they were Bret and Owen, Hart Foundation, all those guys as the heels, as the big Canadian nasty heels. They were still getting all the wins. Bret did not lose a lot on a pay-per-view in these years, and especially with Bulldog having to do that job for Shawn at the one night only pay-per-view. This is the semi-main, and going over a guy like Vader and the Patriot, that's a big win. Patriot, obviously is supposed to be like Mr. America at the time, and Vader, obviously could have and should have been, one of the biggest, baddest dudes in the locker room, and they get the win here, especially in a flag match, which is weird because you don't see a lot of them. That was more of an 80s gimmick with like Corporal Kirshner and Nikolai Volkov or something like that. And then you got, boom, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in the Hell in a Cell to determine the #1 contender. That's another thing people don't remember. It wasn't for a title or anything like that. It was just to determine the #1 contendership at Survivor Series, which we would know would famously go on to be the Montreal Screwjob. Kane would debut, rip the door off. That would start the Kane and Undertaker feud. 5-star match. It goes just about 30 minutes. I don't need to get into detail about that. Enough stuff has been talked about. But a very solid match to watch, and a very solid pay-per-view just to watch in general. Again, we got guys, a lot of talent through these rosters. The weekly episodic television show, Monday Night Raws and stuff like that at the time, they're trying to do everything they can to beat WCW and to win those ratings wars and to put WCW out of business or whatever. And this was them doing their best, so you can see a lot of the stuff that happens here is good quality TV that you should be watching, or you should watch, have you not seen it already. Survivor Series 97, brought to you by Milton Bradley's Karate Fighters. I love Karate Fighters toys as a kid. I remember when they first came out, sort of like a Rock'em Sock'em robot with karate guys. I still have maybe 1 or 2 of them in my action figure collection. They did like tournaments where they would have Jerry Lawler against Sable in a Karate Fighters match. I always thought that was funny. I love this. I love Survivor Series. Like I had said before, I love the Survivor Series concept. I love elimination matches. I love dodgeball. I love all that where it's a team and then it's whittled down to one. I love those type of gimmick matches. Some of these aren't the best though. You got the Godwins and the New Age Outlaws. New Age Outlaws in their infancy. They're not the tag champions yet. They're not the Generation X yet. But that's them starting out. Billy Gunn was Rockabilly. Road Dogg was the roadie, and they sort of, famously, Honky Tonk Man was Rockabilly's manager at the time, and Road Dogg was like, yo, what are we doing? Like, you're a jobber, I'm a jobber, what's going on? Like, let's do something together. And then they smashed Honky Tonk Man with the guitar and became one of the best tag teams that the company ever had. They beat the Headbangers and the New Blackjacks, again, something not really to write home about. They had the Truth Commission against the DOA in this one. Again, let's bring in another faction. Bret Hart's sort of brainchild, the Truth Commission. Interrogator, Jackal, Recon, and Sniper. Interrogator was Kurgan, the big giant who went on to be an oddity in that faction. The Jackal, Don Callis, famous promoter, commentary guy, was Cyrus the Virus in ECW. Sniper and Recon. I want to say Sniper was a guy named Rambo. I know he was big in Germany in like the Catch Wrestling Association. Otto Wance's CWA or whatever, the big German pro wrestling thing over there, where it's sort of more shoot wrestling, catch wrestling based more realism. He was a big champion over there, and Recon, I believe, was Bull Buchanan. I may have that backwards, but again, nobody really that did anything crazy as far as making waves there, but still fun to watch a Survivor Series match with factions. Truth Commission beats the DOA in this one. You had Team Canada, which was not all Hart Foundation dudes. It was Bulldog, Neidhart, and Furnace and LaFon. I love Furnace and LaFon as a tag team. If you can watch anything that Doug Furnace and Phil LaFon did in ECW or Japan, they were an awesome tag team. Worked very well together. Doug Furnace was like a small guy, but like a champion power lifter and stuff like that. They didn't get any tag title runs in WWF, but definitely a very underrated tag team along the same lines as chain wrestling guys, and just tag teams, but a lot of good tag team work and moves and stuff. They beat Team USA, which was Goldust, Mark Merrow, Steve Blackman, and Vader. This is when Steve Blackman was first coming in. They had him worked as a fan that jumped over the crowd and saved Vader, I want to say, or something like that. Legit tough guy and badass in real life. But again, they have Canada go over USA. Canada, USA does not win many matches here against Canada in these couple of months. Kane makes the pay-per-view debut in a match against Mankind. Squashes him here, which makes sense. You had Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson, and LOD, which to me is an awesome super group, Survivor Series tag team. They beat the Nation of Domination, Farouk, D'Lo, Kama, and The Rock. I love when Ahmed Johnson would wear the LOD stuff. I always thought that was really good. I'm a huge Ahmed Johnson fan. Another guy that I thought that they could have maybe been the first black heavyweight champion there. He had to look for it. He wasn't maybe really the best wrestler bell to bell, but definitely had the comic book style look. You had Austin win the Intercontinental title back from Owen. In this match, he got hurt at SummerSlam. Here we are in Survivor Series now, and he gets it back, which is nice. And then Shawn Michaels and Brett in the main event for the screw job. I don't think we need to talk about too much. Everybody knows that. Two of the probably best technical wrestlers in the company history, having one of the most infamous matches in company history as well. DX this was the beginning of DX, and they were all involved in stuff like that too. So that's great to see DX and the Hart Foundation. After Survivor Series, we go to D-Generation X in Your House. Okay, again, DX is the name of the pay-per-view, In Your House is the subtitle. That's December of '97. Let's see what we got here. This was the beginning of we saw the culmination of the light heavyweight title tournament, where Taka Michinoku beats Brian Christopher in the finals. Taka being the main babyface they wanted to push to the light heavyweights, and Brian Christopher being the snarky chicken shit heel. They get 12 minutes. I always liked when those two guys wrestled. Rest in peace, Brian Christopher. Again, they had Bariquas going over the DOA, which is funny. Again, hey, let's just keep throwing these Bariquas and DOA matches out. We had Butterbean making his, I believe, only his second appearance for WWE. I only think he did two pay-per-view matches. The one where he knocked out Bart Gunn at WrestleMania, obviously very famously in like 20 seconds. And then this one against Mark Merrow. Again, I talked in another video about Mark Merrow's legitimacy as an amateur boxer, former Golden Glove. I think he won Golden Gloves like 3 times. And it's funny to see, Butterbean probably outweighed him by 200 pounds here. But they go over 10 minutes. And I'm a big fan of Mark Merrow, so that's a match I'll watch all day. And Butterbean sort of being like a spectacle. New Age Outlaws, as the tag champs, beat the LOD here. They beat them by DQ, but again, just a little bit more of the burial of LOD. Not going to give them the tag shots. Not going to give them a lot of wins. They were sort of past their prime. They were doing it in 88, 89, and here we are in the end of 97. They're no spring chickens anymore. And the New Age Outlaws were obviously the wave of the future, so you can see why they go over here. Triple H beats Sergeant Slaughter in the boot camp match, and they go almost 18 minutes. I've met Sergeant Slaughter. I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan. I have his G.I. Joe action figures. This was sort of getting Triple H, sort of giving him a little bit of a rub, with Shawn being the main guy as the champion and the leader of the DX. They were feuding a lot with the Authority. It's fun to see Sarge in a boot camp match. And again, smart booking to have Triple H go over here. He's got Chyna. This was when Chyna was still brand new, and she was beating up all the dudes for Triple H, which was a great idea. They had Jeff Jarrett beat The Undertaker by disqualification. I don't remember that match at all. I'm not going to fact check it and go back, but I imagine it probably had something to do with Kane. If they were doing a lot of this stuff, they were building towards that big WrestleMania match with Kane. Jeff Jarrett should never beat The Undertaker in any sort of a match on a Monday Night Raw, Monday Night Nitro, pay-per-view, whatever. They should never have Jeff Jarrett going over The Undertaker. But if we're going over by DQ, it's not that big of a thing. Stone Cold beats The Rock for the Intercontinental title. I believe this is their first pay-per-view, and they're in the semi-main here. Probably their first one-on-one pay-per-view outing. The Rock had very recently just become The Rock and was sort of gearing up. He had already been the Intercontinental Champion as the white meat babyface and got booed out of the house. Austin and him starting their feud up. You know, they were printing money a few years after this, or, you know, a year or two after this. So it's nice to see that in its infancy. It only goes 5.5 minutes, but definitely something to check out. And then here's the match that I thought could have went the other way. Shamrock beats Shawn Michaels by DQ. Like I said, I would have loved to see Ken Shamrock be a world champion. I get they had to do it for storyline wise. They sort of had to keep it going. But I like when you can have a legit tough guy as your champion. Everybody likes to talk a lot of smack about Brock Lesnar being a world champion and being a part-timer and stuff like that. But you know, if you have a guy like Brock Lesnar in your federation, you know, in reality, nobody's going to beat him. Same thing with Andre the Giant. You know, you could have made Andre the Giant the champion for 20 years, you know. And a guy like Ken Shamrock would have legitimized the title a little bit more. They didn't obviously put it on him, but that's okay. Interesting note too, we had Scott Taylor versus Brian Christopher in the semifinals of that light heavyweight tournament. They would go on to be Too Cool and tag with each other for a long time. Mr. Aguila was also in that tournament. It would also be known as S.A. Rios. He would come back as S.A. Rios, and that would be Lita's sort of first foray in the company as a valet for him. But it's funny just seeing him go by a different name here. Okay, so that's December of '97. And I'll stop it basically at this Royal Rumble because this is the beginning of '98. Obviously, the Royal Rumble '98 was Stone Cold Steve Austin's second Royal Rumble win. He's the only guy to ever win 3. This is his second. He does it by last eliminating The Rock, which also is a nice callback to the previous pay-per-view. Shawn Michaels beats The Undertaker in a casket match here. This is the casket match where Shawn Michaels would land on the lid the wrong way and mess his back up, which would basically be the end of him for a couple of years. Bless me. Very famously, another very good match. They went 20 minutes, Michaels and The Undertaker. Vader gets a win over when Goldust was doing the artist gimmick. That was always fun. They had another little person's match. The Rock is the Intercontinental Champion here. I guess he had won the Intercontinental title. Or no, I think Austin forfeited the Intercontinental title, I believe, and basically just like gave it to The Rock in some weird storyline. But here The Rock beats Ken Shamrock. Those guys had a lot of matches together. They also were the King of the Ring finals against each other. And I know they still talk on the internet. They just did, I think Shamrock's going into the TNA Hall of Fame and he wants The Rock to induct him, something like that. Legion of Doom get a win over New Age Outlaws, to contradict what I was just talking about, and the Outlaws are the tag champs, but they get it by DQ, so they don't get the title again, obviously. And then, yeah, just the Rumble. I love the Royal Rumble. I love the concept of it. This was the Rumble where you see Mick Foley do all 3 gimmicks come in. You had Tom Brady in the Royal Rumble, which is funny, you know, Sal Sincere. You had Honky Tonk Man made a surprise, one of the first, like, you know, surprise guest appearance type things. I'm pretty sure he gets eliminated by Vader, or by, oh, he does get eliminated by Vader. Look at that. I thought he got eliminated by Kane, but that was my bad. Yeah, Vader gets the number 30 draw, which is fun. It's always nice seeing a big monster heel get the number 30 draw. And then, so from this was sort of the stuff that ushers in the Attitude Era. This is when the WWF starts winning the war. Vince McMahon becomes more of an on-screen character, starts feuding with Steve Austin shortly after, or right around the WrestleMania time, I imagine. Shawn goes out, you know, Brett goes to WCW after the screw job. Shawn Michaels goes out with injury, and then Vince McMahon becomes the number 1 heel in the company, which is sort of what saved everything. So don't just, you know, read about and watch stuff from Monday Night Raw or Monday Night Nitro in those 98, you know, middle to late 98 and 99 years. All of this stuff, like I'm saying, and that I was just talking about, that leads up to that Attitude Era stuff, the pre-Attitude Era stuff. Very, very solid programming and a lot of good talent in the locker rooms at the time and a lot of fun matches to watch. So if you got a second, go back and check it out. I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised. We got 45 minutes now on this thing. It's probably the longest one I ever did. But if anyone is watching this and gets anything from it, again, thank you. I'll try to comment anything I forget at the bottom if I should so think of it or whatever. And I'll try to do another one sometime soon, and I'll put that up as well. Take care.